Welcome to the Woman's Connection. I'm barrie-louise Switson, your moderator. The Woman's Connection is a program about events shaping women's lives and helping one gain authentic power on a personal or professional level. So won't you stay tuned? Welcome. Dating at any age can be daunting, and our guest today is going to talk about what she considers the Dirty Seven. And I would like to welcome June Marshall. June, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Barry.
You wrote a book, The Dirty Seven, Ladies Beware. What prompted you to write this book?
35 years of dating experience and stories from my friends allowed me to see that there were patterns that certain men fell into over and over again. And after 20 years of watching these patterns, I decided to write about them.
Very good. Okay, so what do you consider the Dirty Seven?
The Dirty Seven, all of them have one characteristic in common, and that is what I call meism, their inability to put themselves in your shoes. They are concerned about themselves alone and what you can do for them, not what they can do for you in a relationship.
Well, why should a woman who's looking for a loving relationship avoid these men?
Because they will end up spending the rest of their lives paying for the relationships that they get into with these men. Now, I'm not talking about the filthy seven. The filthy seven would be men like wife beaters, criminals, alcoholics, people like that. The women let them into their lives. I've excluded them.
Okay, so what are the Dirty Seven?
The Dirty Seven seem to be less obnoxious, but in fact, they are equally as dangerous in a lot of ways.
All right.
And I'd like to name them for you very quickly. The first one is Scar Man, or the Walking Wounded. He's just gotten off of a relationship, or maybe he hasn't. Maybe he's been a widower for years. But he's very busy talking about his past and his ex to the exclusion of you.
Lovely.
Yes, you'll spend the entire date listening to him tell you about his ex, either what a bitch she was or what an angel she was. But either way, you'll be competing with her. And in the meantime, he's not at all interested in you.
Okay, so you ditch him fast.
Yes, you ditch him fast. The second one is Side Man. He's just looking for a little piece of fluff on the side. He's not going to leave his wife and his children. It's very expensive to get a divorce these days. He's just interested for a little fun and excitement on the side. I've known many, many women who have wasted their lives waiting for them. There are ways of telling about these men. They never give you their phone number. You don't know where they live. They're not free on holidays and weekends. Those are just some of the symptoms.
Okay.
Then you have Crazy Man. Crazy Man fits within what we consider to be normal bounds of behavior in our society. But if you get to know them, you find out they have more quirks than a whole wing full of psychotherapists would be able to figure out. And they have routines, fetishes, and rituals that they go through that would absolutely make you crazy if you had to live with them over time.
Oh, my.
Yes. Then comes Guy Man. Now, Guy Man's a controversial one. He's gay, but he doesn't want anyone to know it. He pretends to be straight for many reasons. Sometimes it's because he wants to have a family. But in fact, just like a volcano that is bubbling underneath the surface, his sexual proclivities will come eventually out and explode in your face. Maybe you'll walk home one day and find him in bed with another man, like many of my friends have.
Wow.
Yes. After that, we have Yappy. Yappy is Yappy stands for young and poor. Y-A-P. He's the opposite of the yuppie, who's upwardly mobile. Well, the yappie is downwardly mobile, and he's the largest percentage of the men that are out there on the dating scene that are available. They are looking for a woman to take care of them. You can find them in bars and places, hangouts. Their main preoccupation is partying.
Sounds like leeches.
Yes, they're leeches. If they do have a job, it's a very low-level job with absolutely no goals and no plans for the future, except to be taken care of by a woman. I know many, many professional, wealthy women that have yappies that they're supporting right now because they're youthful, they're fun to be with. They just don't have any money, so whenever they go out on dates with them, they're the ones that end up doing all the paying, the driving, etc., maybe even driving them to work.
Oh, wow.
Yes, then we have Old Man. That stands for Old Loser Man, and he's the yappy who's gotten older but not wiser. That all through his years, he hasn't learned anything. He still just wants a woman to take care of him.
Sounds like he's learned, because that's what he wants.
Yes, yes. There are a lot of payoffs for these men to stay the way they are. They don't change. But you'll find a lot of old men down in places like South Florida, where there are 7 women to every 1 man. Many widows out there, and these men are preying on them. They want a woman that will take care of them. The only problem is that they don't have the youth and stamina and vigor and cuteness that the yappy has. And they also try to isolate the woman from family and friends, so she'll devote herself exclusively to him.
That's dangerous.
Yes. And finally, we have bagman. Bagman is a man who has a lot of baggage and luggage from his past. Now, we know that everyone who's lived has baggage, but bagman has steamer trunks full of it. Ex-wives that are still calling, girlfriends, ex-girlfriends that are still calling him up, that come over, children that he's raising from 2 or 3 different marriages, large alimony payments, pets. Maybe his mother's still living with him, a few sick sisters on the side. And all of these are unresolved issues that he dumps on the new woman. But only eventually does she find this out. Then she never sees him again because he's very busy trying to earn money to keep this entire menage in operation.
So how do you get rid of somebody who fits these categories?
Yes. Well, the first thing is really not to start with them to begin with. Recognize it. You see a lot of women through their neediness and other reasons, example, hormones that are flowing through their bodies, will want to have a man in their life so desperately that they will pick one of these, thinking that their love will turn this man around. It will just take time.
Actually, it saps your energy.
That's all it does.
Everything from you, it sounds like.
It takes everything from you. You do all the giving. They do all the taking. Until one day you find that you're completely tapped out and you have nothing except them sitting on your couch asking for more.
Wow. So what do you do with these men? You get rid of them?
You get rid of them, or you actually use criteria up front in your dating relationship.
Okay, for example?
Yes. You base character as the main basis for choosing a man. And that the only way you can see a man's character is over time. Mm-hmm. Your standard date in which you're having a dinner and a nice conversation and jokes is not the venue for meeting a life mate. People are on their party manners then, they have their best behavior. You don't really get to see how they interact with people or how they live, what their hygiene is like. Over time, that's the only way that you can really see how a man behaves. And sometimes women don't have that patience. In their desperation to have a man in their bed or in their lives, they will take home one of these 37. But they would not go to the grocery store and pick a rotten apple and bring it home, hoping that it would eventually, through their great love, turn ripe and juicy and wholesome.
Well, how do you spot a good guy?
Yes. Well, they have all the characteristics the 37 don't have. For example, they're the non-scar man. They're interested in you, your life. The past is past. They're interested in building something with you for the present and the future. The non-side man. You are the center of his life. The relationship is the most important thing. Everything else is secondary to him as far as the relationship is concerned. There are no other women. The uncrazy man, when he's in bed with you, he's in bed with you. He's not in bed with Nursey or a French maid or your feet. or a guy man, a man that loves women and appreciates a woman for what she is and a woman's body. A young man, a yappy, a non-yappy, he may be young, but he has goals and ambitions. There's nothing wrong with being poor if he can show you that he loves you in many ways, but don't take money.
How would you meet some of these good guys?
Well, I believe that, again, something like a bar is absolutely the wrong place because, first of all, you have alcohol going through your system, and you don't want to be meeting people also that are spending time in bars, smoking and drinking. You need to see them maybe in a place where they're devoting their time to something other than themselves. For example, maybe they're devoting their time in a soup kitchen or another charitable organization.
Oh, good point.
Yes. Now, normally I would say work is not a good venue because of the political aspects of it. But one good point of it is that you can see how a man behaves over time and how he interacts with people.
What would you like to leave the audience with?
I would like to leave the audience with the concept that self-respect and boundaries are so important in our dating relationships. Constantly take a look at this man and see, could you stand what he's doing over a period of time? It's about time. It's not the moment instantaneous thing. Women put more time into looking into getting a better outfit for a wedding than they do for getting a better husband. Yes, so that's it. Have some selectivity and boundaries and self-respect.
That's wonderful. Well, I thank you so much
for
joining me.
Thank you so much.
I hope you've learned some fascinating facts about the Dirty Seven, as I have, and I wish you lots of luck in your next adventure.
Thanks.
Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back with the Women's Connection. Welcome to this segment of the Women's Connection. First we had telephones, then we had answering machines, fax machines, Federal Express, personal computers, instant messaging, webcams, and an array of new electronic gadgets. What's next? Well, my guest today is Maggie Jackson, who wrote a book called What's Happening to Home, and we're going to find out what exactly is happening to home and our lives. And I'd like to welcome Maggie. Maggie, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. What prompted you to write this book?
Well, Barry, I was writing a national workplace column for Associated Press, and I was writing increasingly about the blurring of the lines between home and work. I noticed this theme in all of my articles. At the same time, I was writing about work-life balance and noticing that work always came first, not only in that phrase, but in the way Americans live their lives. Finally, personally, this subject hit home, so to speak. I was increasingly taking the kinds of technology that you're talking about home with me so I could have more flexible work hours and so I could work at all hours at night after my kids went to bed. And I wondered, what was I gaining and what was I losing in having this new flexibility?
What were you gaining?
Well, I was gaining the ability to take work wherever I was. In many ways, we're becoming like 21st century snails. We're bringing work wherever we are. Work is a portable item now. People take their laptops on vacations. They take their cell phones anywhere, in the bathroom with them.
It's mind-boggling.
It's a whole new way of life. And at the same time, I think that by blurring these lines and by blurring the lines between public and private and work and home and all sorts of different spaces in our life, we are losing the ability to focus on one thing, to have time for thought, intimacy, these sorts of slow motion activities that once were part of the fabric of our lives.
A man's house is his castle. If this is so, what can we do to prevent our homes from becoming workplaces?
Well, I thought it would be, as I was thinking about writing this book and pondering and with this struggle and hearing so many other people struggle with these issues, I thought that if we flipped work-life balance and talked about life and private life and home, that was a new starting point for trying to balance our lives again. And it seems to me as though we need to take a step back and think about private life, make it a priority in our life, make home a kind of a part of our goal in life. We set goals and try to accomplish things in work and in the rest of our lives, but we don't make it a priority, for instance, to have a family dinner hour or to have some quiet time. And I think another key to keeping the home from being overridden by work is to set boundaries, not big boundaries and not unbreachable boundaries as we had in the past. Work and home used to be totally split. You can bring your work home, you can have your laptop, but perhaps working and having work in all areas of your house is not such a good idea. So we can set boundaries in where and when we work.
Sounds almost like a more stressful situation where you're bringing the work home. I mean, it's like we're on call 24/7, and like you say, there's no home life. I mean, where's your downtime? I mean, where do you relax? There doesn't seem to be any relaxation at all. I mean, even when you see people out on the golf course or you see them out at dinner, they've got their cell phones.
Yes, yes. Well, that raises an interesting point because 100 years ago or 200 years ago, in the pre-industrial age, work and home were also very closely connected. Farmers and craftsmen blended work. They worked many days a week. At the same time, there were distinct boundaries, the setting of the sun, religious holidays, seasons of the year. These were boundaries and cues for people to rest. Now we have technology allowing us to work not only anywhere, but anytime. And in this 24/7 world, I think that you know, there's a whole new way of blending work and home and home. And another major difference between times past and times in the future is that there's a disconnect between your mind and your body when you're working at home. When you used to be hoeing the fields, you could talk to your children, you could be with your wife, you could really actually be a family. You could share that work. Now, you know, mom or dad are on the laptop, their mind is elsewhere, their body is home, but are they really home?
There's no intimacy, there's no family, there's no core values going there. It's like, okay, I've got 2 seconds to talk to you while it's downloading.
Mm-hmm,
And I think it's changing everybody's lives. We're doing things faster and faster and faster. What do you see as the trend for more high-tech gadgets coming into our lives?
Well, in my book, I started by visiting scientists who are dealing with the new kinds of computing that are coming into our lives, because I saw that the home office, for instance, is breaking out of the back bedroom. We're now really plugging in that laptop and using our cell phone anywhere in the house. And what's coming is even more invasive in many ways, because the computing that we're having is going to be breaking out of the box as the home office broke out of the back bedroom. We're having computers that will be in our tables, our chairs, our clothing.
I don't like that.
And these are trends that are coming to Radio Shack. These are trends that I firmly believe will be adopted. There'll be products on, you know, in the local Radio Shack. And I think that we should think now about how to redraw some of the boundaries between home and work before work is all around us, even more so than today.
Well, what about your privacy? There's no privacy going on. I mean, there's like this invasion of all this technology, but you don't have any privacy. I mean, sure, you don't have privacy with your cell phones as you're walking down the street or talking on the phone in a cab or on a bus, but there's no real privacy on anything else. How do you see that affecting us in the future?
Well, privacy is another interesting issue. Our ideal home was always, at least in the industrial age and today, seen as a private retreat, a place where you can find refuge and a place that was private. And that ideal wasn't always lived up to, of course. Households have always been busy places with people coming and going. But now there are changes to the idea of privacy. And I interviewed secretaries across the country, for instance, and I was very surprised to learn that they were just as connected as their bosses, just as connected as CEOs, but they didn't have the power in many instances to say no to this technology. So the privacy of their home was really being shattered by the fact that they were leashed to these technologies. And even further, there's a kind of marketplace growing for privacy. Now you can send ads on emails to friends, and you get points or some sort of
I don't like that.
gift for that. Yeah, there are ads now in elevators, so your privacy is being purchased and sold. And finally, we are also buying and selling our privacy in a certain way by having the cell phone or the laptop from the company. There's a lot of sort of barter and trade going on that we're not really conscious of, and it's changing our home. It's changing the nature of home.
I think it's also changing the way we think, because you're always bombarded by all these sound waves. When do you really, like I said before, when do you have time to relax and let your body recoup? I mean, it doesn't sound like this is happening anytime soon.
And homes are more permeable places in many ways because the outside world is so a step away. We don't live in the local anymore. We live in the international, or the place doesn't matter. You can have a workmate who's from Bombay. You can have a lover who you don't even know where they live, and you can really be detached from place. And so homes are a very different and permeable place. And these are not all bad trends at all. I think that technology, by enabling us to work anywhere or to connect anywhere, is giving us a lot more flexibility, as I was realizing in my own life. At the same time, I think that we have to make sure that all the boundaries aren't taken away and that life doesn't become, as you say, just a fast-paced sort of muddle without time for thought. I mean, these are trends that'll have a lot of positive influences on our life as well.
You write that it's possible to miss out on home just as much when we work at home as when we go to the office. Explain.
Well, part of that observation came from my own personal life. I was working at home during the 2 years that I took a sabbatical from my job to write this book. And I realized that not only was there a disconnect between your mind and body because of technology, but also because you're just as able to close off your home life when you're working as you are when you're in the office. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're involved in the kind of intimacy or reflection or downtime that people need these days. I think there has to be more conscious effort to retrieve some of these activities before they get lost.
Since you wrote your book, what changes have you made in your life and your family's life?
Well, there aren't wholesale sweeping changes. I was always very conscious about keeping my work constrained or restricted to 1 or 2 areas of my house. And even now that I have a full-fledged, full-scale home office in my house, I still am very conscious of trying to keep it that limited. I try not to spread paperwork everywhere or work in all corners of my house. And but I've become more conscious of valuing certain parts of my home. And I think, like many women, home was always sort of a loaded issue. If you're a working woman, if you're serious about your career, in some ways you don't really want to be caught thinking a lot about home. It looks like a kind of cookie baking activity. And not that there's anything wrong with that.
I'd like to cook some more.
Yeah, well, I've become a lot sort of more, I feel more that I value life at home. And then I feel as though that's a very life at home, and the activities of home are just as much as important in our lives today as they used to be. Just being at home doesn't have to be a kind of Victorian idea. And I also realized that you can have both. You can have a home that you really value and is experienced and shared, and a home that you continue sort of inventing with the people that you live with, and yet also have serious work that you take with you in many places.
In your book, you wrote, in 1965, women kept house 30 hours a week, while in 1995, they kept house 17 and a half hours, or rather they did 17 and a half hours of housework, including 6 and a half hours of cleaning. Now, what was fascinating was men's time spent cleaning rose 240% in those 30 years to an astonishing 1.7 hours per week. How do you think going forward things are going to be changing?
Well, that's an interesting question. As far as the caretaking of the house, I noticed that the middle classes, more than ever before, were outsourcing domestic chores. The number of people who have a house cleaner once a week, or a gardener for their front lawn, a lawnmower, or they might buy a cake for their children's birthday party. The number of people who are doing that is really rising. And that might have something to do with a booming economy. I think it also has something to do with the fact that people aren't home. And lastly, the fact that women don't want to be shackled to these chores, so it's easier to just buy all of that. But I asked myself and tried to look in the book what were we losing and what we're gaining. We're gaining time in some ways, but we're also losing the ability in many ways to express caring for each other. So I came to the conclusion that we're really orphaning domesticity in a lot of ways. And then again, both personally and professionally, I think that we need to rediscover. You don't have to be Martha Stewart, of course, or really spend all your time on domestic chores, but on the other hand, you know, by buying all of those domestic chores and all those domestic services, I think we're really losing something.
Well, I hope we find it, because it's, I think what's going on is just absolutely mind-boggling. And would you like to say something in the closing moments?
Well, again, I'd like to stress that, you know, many of the trends that I explored in my book are very positive. I think home can be a more flexible idea. You know, the idea that we don't have to be Ozzie and Harriet or Martha Stewart in order to be good homemakers or good people at home is really important. You know, home is changing. There are a lot of different kinds of people who live there, a lot of different definitions of family. And we can, home is as much more individual than perhaps ever before. But at the same time, I think that we have to be careful, because technology and work are such powerful influences in our American life. And we are, you know, often placing home as just an afterthought to those influences. So I think it's important to think about what you want in a home, and that will help your resolve in many ways the work-life balance in a way that just concentrating on work didn't.
Wow. Maggie, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure learning about what's happening to home, and I want to go bake some cookies. Let's somebody else go grocery shopping for me, but I'll bake the cookies.
Well, that sounds like a good compromise.
That's what I can say. Thank you for joining us. Look forward to having you with us again, and love to hear from you soon. Bye now.